Sea, air, and land. No matter the challenge, these are the people you call when you need something done. Today we are going through some of the most precarious declassified missions as we cover the top 10 dark discoveries made by Navy SEALs. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Maersk, Alabama hijacking. In 2009, there was a cargo ship called the Maersk, Alabama that was out to sea. During this time, it ended up being captured by pirates, and when they eventually fled the ship, they took off in a lifeboat but kept the captain, Captain Richard Phillips, as hostage. Naval ships arrived to the scene, led by the USS Bainbridge, and this is what led to a standoff. SEAL team members were then called in to help. They were flown in over the situation where they then parachuted into the water so that they could be picked up by the Bainbridge. The standoff lasted for an unbelievable 5 days, and this is where the snipers come in. In order to stop the standoff and rescue the captain, SEAL team members made use of their snipers, who took out 3 of the pirates, which allowed them the ability to rescue the captain. If this sounds like a familiar story, you might have seen the 2013 film Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks, which of course was inspired by this very real, insane story of a SEAL rescue mission. In our number 9 spot today, we have Just Cause. In 1989, a group of Navy SEALs were involved in the US invasion of Panama, and during this, they had 2 main objectives. One was to disable the boat that the president of Panama might use to escape, and the other was to disable the plane he might use. When they got to the boat, things went smoothly. They had no issues getting this done. The airfield, however, was a very different experience. They ended up coming under heavy fire, which left 8 SEALs wounded. Rather than being able to disable the plane, they actually ended up having to take it out with a rocket. At the end of the mission, while the objectives certainly were completed, it ended in the deaths of 4 SEALs and 9 more who were wounded. In our number 8 spot today, we have Saving the Dam. During the invasion of Iraq, as the Iraqi forces retreated, it was discovered that there was something big that needed to now be worried about. The coalition forces grew concerned that the retreating forces would destroy a hydroelectric dam in order to help slow the advance of US troops. Of course, this led to the teams kind of weighing out the dangers and the pros and cons, and this led to the realization that the worst case scenario would leave the dam destroyed, which would cut off the surrounding area from badly needed power, and it would also lead to mass amounts of flooding that would of course take countless lives, and that was something that just could not be risked. This led to a joint mission between the SEALs and the Polish Special Forces being put into action. In the end, they were able to secure the dam with no casualties, which saved a huge amount of lives. In our number 7 spot today, we have Octave Fusion. This is an operation from 2012 that came into play after it was discovered that Jessica Buchanan and Paul Hagen Thisted had been kidnapped. They chose SEAL Team 6 for the mission to rescue them. The 2 who had been kidnapped were originally in Somalia on an aid mission, which was centered around removing landmines, but they were taken as hostages while trying to do this work. Rescue missions like this don't just happen overnight, and they take a lot of planning, but after a few weeks, Jessica's health began to decline, and they knew they needed to take action as soon as possible. The teams parachuted in at night at a location that was about 2 miles away from where the hostages were being held, and they made the rest of their way in on foot. Once they arrived there, of course, only chaos ensued. The goal was to save the hostages, of course, and they wanted to capture those who had taken them, but the engagement only ended in the death of the captors. In the end, the hostages were rescued without any injuries. In our number 6 spot today, we have the rescue mission. So this is the 2012 rescue mission that took place in order to rescue 4 aid workers who had been kidnapped in Afghanistan. Using both UK and US forces, they created an incredible task force who worked diligently together to rescue these people. They used satellites to watch the kidnappers' compound while the forces set up a forward operating base that was within striking distance. They began trying to negotiate with the kidnappers, but things quickly deteriorated, and this led to a 2-pronged attack being put forward. They used the cover of darkness to approach, and in the end, they were able to save all 4 of the aid workers successfully. This was likely an incredibly stressful few weeks for everyone involved, but in the end, it showed what the power of teamwork and great leadership can do. In our number 5 spot today, we have Gothic Serpent. So this was an operation that took place in Mogadishu, Somalia during the Somali Civil War in 1993. 1983. The main objective of the operation was to capture a military officer who was wanted for attacks against United Nations troops back in 1992. So basically, in the beginning, things were going fairly well, I guess if you can even say that. They were able to capture and arrest some of the people surrounding the main target, they were able to seize some weapons, that sort of stuff, but something happened later that completely changed the course. Basically, the men of the person they were trying to capture were able to shoot down a Black Hawk helicopter, and the subsequent rescue mission that took place was disastrous. In the end, the troops were just overrun, and this resulted in way too many casualties. The troops were in for quite a battle, one that would go on to become one of the most devastating defeats experienced in close combat by American troops. This went on to have a major effect on American foreign policy, and it effectively ended the United Nations mission in Somalia. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Doctor Rescue. For another 2012 kidnapping, apparently there was a lot of them, we have that of Dr. Dilip Joseph, as well as 2 others who were with him during travel to a rural clinic in Afghanistan. When it was discovered that these men had been taken, they were already being kept somewhere in the mountains, and those who had taken them were demanding a ransom. After a while, the 2 men with the doctor were released, but he was still kept behind, still under the threat of harm. This is when SEAL Team 6 was sent in because they were convinced that the doctor was in danger. In the end, the rescue mission ended with the successful rescue of the doctor and the arrest of 2 of the leaders of the group that had kidnapped him, but it also did end in 6 deaths, which sadly includes a member of the SEAL team, Petty Officer First Class Nicholas D. Check, whose selfless service will never be forgotten. In our number 3 spot today, we have Red Wings. Back in June of 2005, this operation took place, and it was intended to see the capture of a high-ranking Taliban official. There were 4 Navy SEALs who were tasked with surveillance and recon of a group of structures that were known to be used by the target, as well as his men. During some of the first hours of the operation, the SEALs were attacked, and this attack ended up claiming 3 out of the 4 of their lives. The final surviving SEAL was unconscious and seriously wounded, but still alive, and he was later rescued from the area. Unfortunately, this was not the end of the casualties, however. Once it was discovered that the team of 4 SEALs had been ambushed, 1 out of the 2 Quick Reaction Forces, or QRF helicopters, was sent in to aid the SEALs, but it ended up getting shot down by an RPG-7. This ended up taking the lives of all 8 Navy SEALs and all 8 US Army Special Operations aviators on board. In our number 2 spot today, we have Urgent Fury. So back in 1983, the United States invaded Grenada on a mission that was aimed at protecting the American citizens that were within its borders. In the beginning, there was a SEAL team that was assigned to doing recon for the Marines that were to later come ashore, but that is not where their job ended, as they were later reassigned on 2 missions. One was to extract Grenada's Governor General, and the other was to capture the only radio tower that the country had. This is where the disaster sort of starts. So basically, due to a lack of information prior and the fact that they were headed in during a storm, resulted in 4 of the SEALs meant to be helping in these missions getting lost off of the island's coast. The remaining SEALs ended up splitting into 2 teams to divide and conquer their 2 missions. The first team ended up making it to the Governor General's mansion in order to grab him, but this is when they discovered that they left their communication equipment on the helicopter. This left them surrounded by hostile forces with little resources, so they used the mansion's phone to call in an AC-130 airstrike, and they were able to escape. The other team that went for the tower ended up getting pinned down, and this led to them just destroying the tower. They then swam out to the open sea, where they were waiting for hours before being picked up. Many people have been openly critical about this mission, but at the end of the day, I am certainly no Navy SEAL, so I can't really criticize anyone here. In our number 1 spot today, we have Neptune's Spear. This is most definitely the most famous of all of the Navy SEAL missions, and it took place in May of 2011. This was actually a CIA mission, but it involved SEAL Team 6 in a huge way. This was the mission where they were going to raid a compound where it was believed that Osama bin Laden was staying. To prepare for this mission, they had a full, life-sized replica of the compound made in North Carolina, and it said that it was used extensively in the preparation. Americans. Once it was time for the operation to take place, all those involved in the raid flew from Afghanistan to Pakistan in the middle of the night. The entire operation lasted about 40 minutes and it involved a brief firefight. In the end, several occupants of the compound along with the main target were killed. This was a mission that took nearly 10 years of monitoring and planning to complete, and I know it truly was an unforgettable moment in American history. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye!